Hey everyone, my name is Michael Allen Herman.
And I'm Josie Eli Herman.
We are the makers behind The Call of the Void, and we have a very special Q&A for you today.
Yeah, we got all these questions from you guys, and we are so excited to dive in.
Today we're going to talk about some of the deep dives of the world, some of the creations of the characters, and really dive into the creation of The Call of the Void.
We also want to say that there are some spoilers in this.
So if you haven't listened to the rest of the show, this is definitely not the first episode to jump into.
We do reveal some plot points, particularly some that happen towards the end of the show, so you will definitely want to finish the show before you proceed.
Right.
Some people have been asking us as well, what are you guys busy with now? And we want to talk about that really, really quick because we are in the process of making a feature film.
We actually just wrapped principal photography for this feature film. It was a historical Victorian mystery film.
Yeah, it's called House of Ka. There's information on that on the Acorn Arts and Entertainment website. If you're just interested, want to keep up to date on that. That's the project that we're currently working on. A little bit of a step away from audio drama, but something that is kind of a huge part of our life right now.
Yeah.
All right, so the first question that we're going to start with is from Daphne. How did the idea for The Call of the Void come to be? What was the process like in developing the story, the characters, even the monsters? That's a great question, Daphne.
Yeah, well, I think it's no mystery that this is a Lovecraftian-inspired world. And I think one of the first things that we wanted to do was to have this horror of the unknown and this sort of suspense and mystery that came from not knowing something. And I think that that's one of the very first ways that we dipped into the idea of the void, because the void itself is very, unknown. And that was kind of the first sort of step into that kind of color of the world.
Yeah, and I'm also going to add, just on a purely world-building level, we took a trip to New Orleans. So we're from Michigan, but we took a trip to New Orleans, and we loved it. We went to this little apothecary shop and met a guy that was working there that was very, very much inspired Topher's
Very much
character.
inspired Topher, yeah.
And we loved New Orleans. We thought it was such a quirky, interesting place. And what was interesting about it, too, is that it had this kind of overarching theme of death. But people weren't depressed or anything about it, but they were all just kind of a hurricane could come by and just destroy us all tomorrow. And, we just have to be okay with that in our lives.
Yeah, they were so kind of chill with doom. It was always there. It was kind of present, but they had a good relationship with it. And that was really, really interesting. And one of the things I think we were fascinated about, diving into a world specifically like NOLA.
Yeah, and I specifically remembered that we came back from that trip and we were like, let's make a story set in New Orleans, because that was so cool.
It was so cool, yeah.
And we really wanted to make sure that we were doing justice to New Orleans, at least as best as we could. We wanted the characters to seem like they could be living there. A lot of our characters are actually not from New Orleans. They're from the Midwest, but they live in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So they kind of have a little bit of that duality going on where they're New Orleans, but also not. But we did want to make sure that we were, even things like it's New Orleans. It's
New Orleans instead of New Orleans.
Yeah, instead of New Orleans. Or even if you're really from there, like you said, it's Nolans.
Nolans. Yeah, which is actually interesting. So the different characters, they do say even the word New Orleans different depending on how long they've been in New Orleans. Or so if there's an extra or somebody who came in who had never been to NOLA, they were a tourist.
A tourist say New Orleans.
They would say New Orleans, all the way out, which is the incorrect way of saying it. And then the more the officer masons and those people like that who had been there and lived there for a while, they said it the local way. And then as far as the monsters go, creating some of the monsters, I think we were just trying to really push the soundscape and kind of imagine what would be a horrifying encounter to have for these characters. And so some of the monsters came from that. And just things that we find very scary. A lot of the horror in this story is actually just very scary to us personally, in a personal way. So whether that's the void, whether that's night gaunts or whatever, I think some of that is just very built in to be spooky in that way.
Yeah, and I think talking about the monsters, obviously there's things like the night gaunts and stuff, but if we're talking specifically about the monster of the void itself, that was an interesting development as the 3 seasons went, because in the first season, obviously, it's kind of ethereal. It's just kind of this whispery voice. And then as we started to develop the story more and more throughout seasons 2 and 3, we thought, well, it would just be interesting to just give a little bit more of a voice and even a face to that monster. So that's where the character of Jonah.
Yeah, it was a very practical reason, right? Because we didn't want to just have whispers forever,
Forever and
like, kind
ever.
of like, ooh, ominous whispery voice. That was good for like a first season or a first chunk of episodes. But yeah, pretty quickly we realized that we had to have some kind of, voice to this creature. And it had to be one note, but it definitely had to have, presence. And
and I think giving a human form to the void also allowed us to explore the relationship between this thing, which is the call of the void, which is intrusive thoughts, literally that relationship between Etsy and her monster, and creating a human face to that allowed it to be developed in a way that we couldn't do in season 1.
Which is a great segue to the next question, which is from
from Kevin
here.
So this is from Kevin. Did you know the full story beginning to end since the beginning, or did you work on it season by season?
The answer is like yes and no for both that. So the very first season was its own contained thing, and we were just trying to do a season of something because we'd never done audio before, and we didn't know what it was going to be like. So we thought, let's do one season, and originally it was going to be 10 episodes, and then it actually became 9 episodes. And it was a contained story. It was supposed to be just one arc, one story, one, battle, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then we quickly realized that ending, the climax of season 1 was not as exciting as we thought. It was for like a whole...
Yeah, it was like, it happened so fast, right? It was just kind of like, and then she stands up to it and is like, no.
Right. Which, when you write that, it sounds like it's enough. Like on the page, on the script page, it looked like that was enough of a climax and a confrontation, but it did need a lot more. And then pretty quickly, Josie had this genius sort of 2-season follow-up to that, which was seasons 2 and 3. And I think Josie knew where she was going with 2 and 3 after 1. Like 1 was this perfect step into the world that like told us what we can do in this world. It brought us a lot of confidence as creators and what we can actually create. And then it showed, like, it pointed this like beaming light towards like what should be the ending of this show. And then Josie had these great ideas for 2 and 3, and they were together. So like 2 and 3 was pretty much mapped.
Pretty much, but not completely. I do remember we had kind of a end goal for the show in mind, even like inspirations and a couple like scenes that were on our hearts as we were writing even season 2. But we didn't have everything mapped out. We had, like, for instance, I don't think the character of Tara and the cultists were completely mapped out until way later.
They were just wild to begin with.
Yeah.
The cultists, they were so weird, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't
and cultists talking about the ex-cult remnants. So Tara and her
band of misfits.
Yeah,
so it seems like they're just crazy, right? Like, it'd be easy to write these people because they're just crazy, but finding the right brand of crazy for all of them and making them all belong in the right crayon box of crazy was really challenging. And that was actually one of the biggest friction points, I think, of season 3.
And also who they were, but also how they interacted with other people, because we wanted them to get together with Necromon, but originally they weren't even cultists, I think, right? Man, there were all kinds of ideas of like who these people were going to be. I think in a early draft, there were going to be people from the lab and stuff.
They were, they were like ex-doctors or something.
We knew that we wanted to have these people that were after Etsy, but we didn't know how. And then as the story was developing, we saw that we wanted them to be connected with Necromon. So at some point, we just thought, oh, okay, they can be from the cult. And,
which was obviously such a simple and clear connection because there's a history then with Necromon. But honestly, the first scene where they meet Necromon was rewritten so many times.
I think originally, or at some point, it was going to be at a roller rink.
A roller rink. It was. Yeah, they were going to meet Necromon at a roller rink, these cultists.
We're not even joking.
No, we're not even joking. That's 100% serious. It was just weird because they were such a vibrant, strange energy. And then Necromon is like imbued with like mystery and prestige and this sort of like deep ethereal voice. And that like was such a weird combination. Like when we tried to put those colors together, they just would not go together for a very long time.
Yeah.
Until we managed to figure out how they did connect. And
yeah.
And we love them now. They are so lovely. And those performances that the actors gave are just so good.
Yeah. So Michael has a lot of really fantastic techniques for writing and outlining. And one of them is sort of this process in which we just throw down any kind of ideas that we have that we just want to see. And so I remember us doing that particularly for season 3. And some of the ideas we kept all the way through. One of the very earliest ideas we had for season 3 was just Topher and Mason fight a cryptid. I just remember we just had written on a note card, Mason shoots a gun at a cryptid.
And it made it all the way through?
It made it all the way through.
Yeah, we call that the rapid fire round of outlining, where you just throw down every idea that you can think of. And many of them don't stick, but a lot of them do.
Some of them do, yeah. I think the character of Simone is someone that season by season developed a lot. Some of these side characters, such as maybe the character of Eli, was not someone that we had in mind until we were writing season 3. And I think that Eli was a really cool character for us to write and explore because I think it just, he came for a very practical reason. Simone was not in the same area. Simone was not in New Orleans, so she needed sort of what's called a Watson.
A Watson, that's one of those, sort of like pet names that we give us, like a character that, like a major character needs to talk to.
Yeah, that's so like basically Sherlock needs a Watson. So like basically Simone just needed someone to talk to on a practical level.
Yep.
So we developed this character of Eli that we both really fell in love with. And he's like one of our favorite new characters in season 3.
Yeah, he's just a cool guy. Yeah. But speaking of characters who we adore,
okay, so let's go into the next question here, which is from Kevin. I'm not sure if this is the same Kevin or a different Kevin, but another question from Kevin here. Fargo was a very quirky character, which I loved. Was the character based on someone that you all knew, or what inspired you two to create the character?
I don't think she was based on somebody that we knew. I think she was an original creation, and she sort of came from a place of, there's not many conspiracy theorist women characters. Yeah. You know, there's a lot of like the crazy conspiracy theory guy in like a van, but then we hadn't seen that in a woman, I don't think maybe ever. And I'm sure it's out there. Sorry guys. I'm sure there's a version of that in some television show or something, but we just like loved that energy that came from Fargo. And she's another character that did evolve, that did sort of like grow into her own, but I think that we found that she was really funny in season 2, and then we were like, okay, more for Fargo in season 3. That's because Annie Dilworth is just so
I was
funny,
gonna say,
so smart.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple developments that happen. There's the idea when you conceptualize, then when you actually write. She got a way of speaking when we were writing her, like saying man a lot. You know, she has certain words that she says a lot. She has certain phrases that she'll say a lot, and just like the cadence of the way that she's talking. And then I think the third development comes from the actor, and that was Annie. And Annie is just phenomenal. I think that we wrote season 3 Fargo based on how Annie performed Fargo in season 2.
Absolutely.
And I think that allowed us to get even better with Fargo's character in season 3. We wanted more of Fargo.
And Annie like really brought in like character research and documents that she'd done, you know, to do as like a deep dive into who this woman would be and where she had been and all that stuff. She'd done so much work so that she really knew this character, like walking into season 3. And we were like blown away by that. I mean, she just walks into the room to do some readings of these scenes, and she already knew so much, this like rich history of who Fargo was. And that was awesome.
We talk about the characters all the time when we're just in our daily lives, like almost like we know them. And I think Fargo is one of those characters where we imagine what was Fargo's life like growing up? Like, is she from New Orleans? Does she have a family at all? Like, did she have siblings at all? How was she raised? We decided we didn't really want to answer those questions in the story, but it's fun to visualize little kid Fargo like tromping through the woods. She's just a very, very fun character that we really love.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We love Fargo.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is also from Kevin here. We have the Lovecraft influence on the series is evident and fantastic, but what else influenced the writing? X-Files, perhaps? Loved Call of the Void. Well, thanks so much, Kevin. Yeah, we had a lot of influences for the show other than Lovecraft. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about Stranger Things. I mean, like, season 1, I think, is the one we were most worried, like, is this just completely ripping off of Stranger Things. We have like a girl from a lab in the Midwest.
Sure.
But then that was one of those things that it was a base inspiration for the show. But then I think the characters are very different from the characters in Stranger Things. And it's a whole different theme and a whole different story. It's not really a story of growing up like Stranger Things is. It's more of a story of
confronting like the intrusive thoughts. You know?
Yeah, right.
I think another inspiration was Rabbits, the podcast. That was, I think, the very first fictional podcast that we listened to. Yes. I think it was. One of the first. Welcome to Night Vale might have been the first,
for sure.
Fictional worlds that like was as a podcast that we listened to. But that was definitely a huge inspiration too, because we just loved the idea of a mystery engine inside an audio medium. That was just a really cool way to tell a story. So that was super, super inspiring.
Yeah, we very much took our format from Rabbits, at least initially, and we're like, okay, like I get it. It's like a mystery thing. They walk around. They're trying to solve this mystery, so they go interview people. And
even like the introduction, you guys know, because you've heard the introduction. It like has like, Rabbits is like, how does it begin? It's like, it's Rabbits. Are you listening?
Are you listening?
And we were super inspired by Rabbits. We thought it was super
really
cool.
And I guess, okay, this is also kind of a weird one, but maybe the TV show Mindhunter?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we talk about comps sometimes with characters, and Topher is so much a Holden comp. Holden in Mindhunter is this sort of young detective guy who's trying to figure out what serial killers are and who serial killers are and things like that. And there's a weird softness to Holden, and I think there's a lot of that in Topher too.
Yeah, talking about comps. So comps are basically when you have other characters that inspire your character, and a collection of other characters that kind of go like, well, these are sort of a similar world, and this is kind of what we're going for. I think comps for Topher were Holden from Mindhunter, and then
like Milo Thatch.
From Atlantis.
Kind of like that kind of color.
And then maybe a little bit of like Peter Parker energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom Holland's
Peter Parker a little bit. And then I think for Etsy, it was Raven from
Teen Titans.
From Teen Titans.
Yep.
And pretty much just Raven from Teen Titans.
No, there was more for Etsy too, because she's more than just goth girl. I think it's easy to see her as just like, she's goth, but like, she's more alt and like grunge than she is like goth.
A thing that I really liked about Etsy, I was interested in telling the story of someone who has suppressed their childhood trauma enough that they are in society for a while and they're like living their lives.
And they're functioning.
They're functioning.
Yeah.
But there's so many layers underneath the surface. This like sarcastic humor. As the story develops, get to know her a lot more.
Absolutely.
Well, then let's go to our next question then. Our next question is from Ron. He says, not really a question, but thought I'd mention that I would love to listen to a Fargo spin-off podcast, something like Fargo Goes Far Out, Man, where Fargo debunks cryptids or conspiracy theories. That would be amazing. Thanks for the great show.
Oh, thanks, Ron. Thanks so much,
Ron.
man.
Yeah, people love Fargo.
I love Fargo, too.
I love Fargo, too. She's one of my favorites.
And I like to imagine that, too. I like to imagine these, like, spin-off series where she's gone off looking for lizard people or she's, infiltrated some, den of some cryptid species.
Not completely off the table.
Right.
Nothing's completely
off the table.
But nothing's completely off the table as well.
Yeah, I do love that idea. I think that there's so much to be mined there. I think that, even like the things that are not extraordinary in Fargo's world, I think she makes extraordinary,
Yeah, I think so too. Another thing that I love is, this is in the same world of this comment, but also a little bit off. I love seeing fan art. I haven't seen anyone do fan art of Fargo yet, but like, please, someone out there, do fan art of Fargo because we all want to see it.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be sweet.
I want someone to like cosplay Fargo in like an amazing like Ghostbusters suit with like some kind of weird contraption. That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's go on to the next question here. Next question is from Watcher of Forums. And Watcher of Forums says, hello, I love the Call of Void, and I want to ask if I can get the title music, the music underlying the sentence you are listening to the Call of the Void at the start of every episode. I am aware it's very short, but it kind of resonates with me, and I would love to be able to listen to it in the clean version. You are awesome, and I mean the entire team.
Oh,
thank you so much, Watcher of Forums.
Absolutely.
So the song is called Parallel. It's by Ross Budgen, Rossbugden.
It's on YouTube. You'll be able to find it on YouTube. It's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful song. We'll link it to you because we've got your email.
Oh, yeah. We'll send it to you.
But yeah, all of the music that we get is either copyright free, royalty free, or I think there's a couple things that we
paid for
purchased. Yep. But yeah, that one.
But those are in the show description, so sometimes you'll be able to find those in the show description of episodes.
But, Parallel by Ross Budgeon is the song that you're looking for there. And then we have another question here coming right through. This one has a spoiler in it. This is from Barbara.
Spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning right here. If you haven't listened to all seasons, please do before you proceed for this next question. This question is, why did you kill Simone?
Right to the point. Straight to the point.
So this is in reference to episode 8 in season 3, of course. This actually is a great question. Why and how could you do this to us and to the world, killing Simone? I do remember when we first realized that this was going to happen was when we were talking about the ending and how we had this picture in mind of sort of this Frodo and Sam at the edge of Mount Doom kind of thing.
Yep.
And it was like the entire world was erased except for the two of them, basically. And I remember as soon as we came up with that idea, we went, oh no, that means Simone has to go.
Yeah.
And so, we did make that decision that was going to happen. And as soon as we made that decision, we went, oh, that scene is going to be so tragic between the two of them, between Topher and Simone. That was something that we were dreading for a very long time. We were dreading writing that scene. After we wrote it, we were dreading recording that scene. We were dreading editing that scene. There were many tears, both Michael.
Oh, yeah. We cried so many times in the process of creating that scene. Yeah, from the writing process all the way through to the end of like the actual editing process of that scene.
Oh, yeah,
But I also think that it shows, Simone's resolve. I think it shows her strength when she sets out to do something. She sees it through. And that's the one line that science goes to the end. I think Simone, she goes to the end. And when she is committed to a cause, she really pursues it. And that's really beautiful about her. And I think that in that scene, we really see that come to fruition where she really goes all the way and she believes in something. She believes in hope and she believes in good all the way to the very, very end. And she's willing to, fight for that until the last moment, which is really beautiful to see. And I'm going to start crying now if I keep talking about it because it's still such a painful moment.
There were a lot of tears in the recording of that. The tears are real. I think both actors, both Michael and Amanda, were crying all over.
And the reason too is because we were also saying goodbye to these characters after 3 years of our lives, working in this world, and to have to say some final lines, knowing that some of these are the last things that we'll say as these characters, was like heart-wrenching in a perfect way, in a beautiful way, because it's just really nice to build a world and then to say goodbye to a world as well.
But then, Simone comes back. So
it's okay.
It's all good. It's all good. Next question is from Danny. And Danny says, hello, I would love to hear about your sound mixing. How much Foley work versus soundbite searching did you have to do? I thoroughly enjoyed the specificity of the soundscape, and that outro bumping the beat through my car was a blast. Thank you so much, Danny. First of all, that outro song, we love that. We also jam to that all the time. It's Hackers by White Bat Audio.
And if you haven't heard White Bat Audio yet, go check out White Bat Audio's YouTube. It's all royalty free
and copyright free.
Yeah, and it's this epic synth music that we used a couple times throughout the series, but it's just incredible synth 80s feeling.
I think also the song when Etsy comes back and make my day, bitch. That moment, moment is also a White Bat song.
Check out White Bat.
Check out White Bat. He's
such a vibe.
Incredible.
So good.
Yeah. All of his music, or at least most of his music that he releases, is copyright free, just free for YouTubers and autopilots, and free for podcasters and stuff to use. So check out White Bat.
Absolutely.
He's awesome.
But sound mixing,
as far as the sound mixing and Foley goes, great question. So we did a pretty good combination of both original,
I think like
Foley
50-50
probably.
Yeah.
A lot of the environmental, particularly weirdly specific things, like I remember the cages on the dock in the first episode of season 3. We had some like metal lanterns that were in the house, and we were kind of kicking them around, and we were like, oh, that sounds exactly like the cages that we want to use. I mean, it's kind of hard to look up online like metal cages being thrown around on a dock. So like,
Yeah,
you know,
it's really specific.
so like, yeah, for things like that were very specific, particularly like hand objects, actually. So a lot of that stuff we did Foley. And then I think it's probably pretty clear that a big explosion we didn't do.
Right. Yeah. We
So,
didn't blow up our house.
Didn't blow up our house
right.
or anything like that. Car accidents. Yeah. A lot of car accidents were also sounds that were freesounds.org, man. That's
it's a great
tool.
Great place. But then we did layer them and built them to be much more complex than just what you could find
Absolutely.
online.
So, yes.
So that they could be more intentional, and so that we could, make a car accident sound not just like, a generic like,
right,
but like a really layered, you could feel when this part of the car hits.
And that was a huge, huge process for us. The tedious but easy part was putting together the dialogue and then just layers and layers and tracks on tracks of things, particularly for big moments like car crashes, cryptid battles.
Yeah.
There's I don't know how many tracks. I think somebody has this question later on, but how many tracks do you think we had at some point?
Depends on the moment. I think the biggest was over 20, where we had different things weaving in and out. And it's like anything from, just like wind and sort of like an environmental brush all the way to, like a car crash or like a blast back from Etsy, things like that.
Yeah.
Those were, a combination of multiple sounds all together. So those layer pretty quick. And one of the cool things that I think made it so specific is that Josie continued to direct in the editing process. And I think that's really important for young directors or young audio creators. It's that like it doesn't just need to be like footsteps because they're outside, so they should be walking, but rather like they move in the scene when they should move in the scene and with the dialogue. So they stop when they should stop. Right. Like a moment of revelation or something like that.
Yeah. So I love to direct and I direct theater as well. And one thing in theater is the blocking, obviously. And there's no physical blocking in a podcast, but you can make those choices. They're walking because you hear footsteps, and then there's a change in the conversation. Maybe Topher says something that is a light bulb moment or something, and then they stop walking because there's a halt there. There's a shift in the conversation, and you feel that when you're doing the editing. It's I think very important.
Yeah, and the same thing with like when they're like flip over a menu, things like that. That can be a punctuation mark in the sound design, and I think it should be, because whether the audience recognizes it or not, they do feel that. They feel the beat change.
Yes, that's true.
And I think they even hear it. I think like a lot of audience is really smart, and I think that you guys know when like there's a beat change that like the menu flips, and it's like that's almost a joke.
That's the scene between Etsy and Jason in the cafe. I think is one of those examples where there are not just random menu flips. They all happen at certain times because it is like it's an awkward moment. So what does Etsy do? She turns to her menu and she's looking at her menu because she can't think of anything else to say. And just those kind of choices, like every sound choice that we made is intentional.
It should be, yeah. So silence is intentional, and you're right. And then every sound file should be intentional. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we have some questions here from Chris, who is our mom.
She's my mom. So thanks, Mom.
So Chris says, how many quirks of Topher and Etsy do you have? This is a great question. And I think it goes into like, I remember somebody else asking a question similar to this, is like, how similar are you to Topher and Etsy? And as far as the quirks go,
I mean, I think like there's a lot of similarities between like us and the characters, but they're also different people. I think Topher inspires me to be like a better man and to be a better person. I think that Topher listens. Topher has an extremely high EQ. I think he's really smart, but like emotionally smart, and I think I strive for that. But that's not the question. The question's about quirks.
Oh, you succeed.
Oh, thanks. But like the questions about the quirks, like I have, I do time my tea sometimes. I do, I do have some weird, interests like Topher does, and some academic interests and things.
I think we did sneak a lot of ourselves into Topher and Etsy, but even more than that, Topher and Etsy snuck themselves into us.
So true.
I think the show, the last 3 years making the show, has changed us. I mean, I think that we both dress like Topher and Etsy, and we both
a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, like a lot more. I mean, we'll be like hanging out one day and we'll be like, wow, look at what we're wearing. Are we Topher and Etsy right now? Like,
yeah, just casually cosplaying. Yeah.
Just casually cosplaying Topher and Etsy. And then I think that things like I'll listen to music that I think Etsy would listen to or that Topher would listen to. All the time, music reminds me of them. And we actually have these Spotify playlists that we listen to all the time. We have like an Etsy inspired one and a Topher inspired one and a Simone inspired one. The links to them are on our donor page, but I think if anybody wants them, I can just send you the link.
I think, also like the cooking snob that Topher is.
Yeah.
That's something that I've
Michael's a cooking snob.
Yeah,
sure.
I've definitely like grown into that. I remember sitting down in the kitchen and thinking that like I got to take gumbo seriously like a number of years ago. And that was like one of the most like meta Topher moments ever. To just be like, okay, so how do I make the gumbo worthy of gumbos, And I think that's a quirk.
Yeah. Another question from Chris here. Which episode was the most difficult to perform? Easy. Episode 8 of season 3.
Heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
It's so emotional, so difficult, and I think we knew the ending because we knew the story, but even knowing the ending, it was just a brutal experience to go through those difficult emotions and saying goodbye to characters that we like loved. Oh man, even Necromon. Spoilers,
Necromon,
but saying goodbye to that, I cried every time we edited that because it was just so beautiful to end that character in that way, and it was just so sad to like have to get through those emotions. Also, screaming and fighting.
Yes, I was just going to say this. Screaming and fighting are so difficult to do. I think we got better at them, but like I remember early on, it was hard. I mean, have you ever like just tried to scream into a microphone? It's like awkward.
It's awkward. Yeah, you like play it back and you immediately like hate
you're like,
the scream.
Wow,
you're like,
I sound so stupid.
So awful. Like, can I scream? Like, do I know how to scream? Josie found the difference between like a fighting scream, like a battle scream.
Yeah, versus
like a getting hit scream.
Well, I was so bad at them at first, but then I was like, okay, there's a difference between getting punched and expelling energy. Yeah, punching. And Etsy's got like, not only does she like fight physically sometimes, but she also does the blasting thing. There's receiving a blast energy. There's getting hurt. There's punching someone, and it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
Just really
a lot
hard.
of it is like duration. You think that like you can just be like loud and aggressive, but honestly, loud and aggressive is usually really short. You're just like rah, and you like scream. But like trying to like bring it into this like emotional like rah, this like kind of a roar was really difficult. And I think it's all over episode 8.
Over episode 8. Yeah. I think another one for me was episode 9 of the last season. I was getting to the point where I was doing my last little monologue, and I did it. And then I just started bawling my eyes out, and I just ugly tears streaming down my face. I think the moment that happens previous, when Etsy's crying about Topher, that's actually just me crying about being done with Call of the Void. And so that was a really, really hard moment to get through. It's a really, really hard moment to record and to perform was very, very difficult.
But good.
Yeah. And next question, this is more of a fun one. Which drinks do Topher and Etsy enjoy?
Oh man.
Easy. Etsy, black coffee, just nothing in it, just straight up black.
Topher likes a weird tea. A Darjeeling, great choice. A red tea or a white tea. Green teas, definitely. Of course, a good black tea. But loves weird teas. Kombucha, definitely like a go-to for our boy Topher. I think he probably would have tricked Etsy into drinking some kombuchas, and eventually.
Well, and it's a fun question actually, because it does describe the difference between them. Topher is very pretentious, and Etsy is not. Like Etsy is just the opposite of pretension. I think she is just.
She's true. She's honest.
She's true and honest. Yeah. Topher's true and honest as well, but just very pretentious about it.
Yeah, right.
And then how many hours did it take to edit each episode?
Ooh,
great question.
Really good question. I don't know if there's a good answer for that one because there's so many phases, right? It's like the writing of the episode, the editing of the episode, even the recording. The recording is the shortest part. I'll say that. I do know that definitively because we bring in actors. They're over for like, honestly, just a couple of hours. And then we rifle through all their scenes and then we're done with them, Yeah. Not that we're done with them. No, we love our actors. But then we're all set with that phase, right? And it's that like production of writing and that post-production of editing that really, sucks up all of the hours. And I think to write a script and then to rewrite a script, I think we have that down to, oh man.
No idea.
No idea. It's really hard to put like a number value on that. But I will just say it's a lot.
We'll just say this, though. I'm not sure how long for each episode, but it did take us a whole year of working a lot on it. I mean, we didn't make any money on this, but it was like our full-time job. I mean, we worked as much as a full-time job on Call of the Void for about a year to make 9 episodes. So, do the math.
Yeah, it's like a long time. Yeah, right.
The next questions come from Rebecca. Rebecca gave us a lot of amazing questions, so we're gonna answer all of them because we love all of them so much. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We love you. First question from Rebecca. What's the creative process like for creating the show as a whole? Did you plan the whole story before you started the series, or did it take some unexpected twists along the way? Did you make edits to the script while you recorded, or was it relatively polished by the time you got to that point?
Oh man, did we make edits? Absolutely.
We absolutely made
surprisingly
edits,
later than you would think. I think the craziest, like last minute, 12th hour kind of saves happened around, I think, in season 2.
Yeah.
And there was some major changes that happened days before release.
Yes.
I think the biggest was probably
KP.
Yeah, KP.
Okay. So we'll explain this story. It was actually episode 3 of season 2. That one's called The Cathedral. And ironically, it's one of my favorite episodes of season 2 now.
Me too.
But when we first put it together, we hated it. We just couldn't explain why, but it was boring. It dragged.
The pacing was slow.
And we're like, what is going on with this episode? Why is it not working? So this is the first episode. It's actually the first episode of the whole show where we start to step into Etsy's world a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I think we cut one scene, but then we actually rearranged some scenes in it. So it flowed in a different way. And then we also added this whole sequence where she goes to a drug den and meets this character named KP. And what's weird is that, so we introduced this whole kind of subplot about the Yellow King, who is Jonah, but and that was not originally in the script. I think before we recorded season 2, we didn't even have this concept that Jonah still was the character. He was the Void, but we didn't have this concept that he was also going out and sucking the life out of people in this very Vampire of New Orleans kind of way.
Yeah.
The reason why we were doing that is because we wanted Jonah to have a little bit more of a human threat than he did in the previous version. So we introduced the concept that he was doing this, and this was a scene where that mystery is first starting to develop in season 2. So it was just, I don't know. For some reason, I love drug den scenes. I always have.
You always have.
It was like this weird, what if Etsy goes to a drug den?
And so we had these thoughts, let's have this sequence, but it was episode 2 of season 2 had already been released. That's not usually how we work. We usually have a good handle on the season. We have a good handle on the episode by episode sort of breakdown. But for this one, we just had to go through a restructure, and it was happening in the middle of a week. So it was kind of this crisis moment where, how do we fix this episode? We have 4 days to before the release of it.
Yeah.
And that's when we decided to have this KP character come in. And so we just messaged one of our friends.
Jessica.
Yeah. The best.
And it's so funny. She's still, we talk about this all the time. I sent her a message and I said, hey, could you do a Southern Belle accent? And she's like, yeah, I think so. And I was like, great. Would you be interested in doing this part? And she was like, sure. And I'm like, yeah, so you're a drug lord. And she's just like, wait.
You're like, what?
Southern Belle drug lord. Yes.
But incredible. And that sequence had to come to life really quickly. Then our edit was really fast on top of that.
Yeah.
But then
it turned out to be one of my favorite scenes in season 2, honestly. It's just, because it's fun. You delve into Etsy's world and you kind of go wow, okay, I didn't realize this about Etsy. I didn't realize that she had this problem. And it introduces a whole new layer to her and a whole new problem that she's fighting with. And it turned out really great.
But then, so that's probably the most drastic version of that, right? But on a weekly basis, the episodes would still, change, flex, and grow
absolutely
as they, developed. So I think that even almost every episode, there would be some like small line changes, some small performance changes and things like that. Sometimes that involved bringing in an actor. Bless her heart, Amanda Buckhalter came in so many times as Simone because she's such a major character that when something had to change, we had to bring Simone back in.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that sort of, evolved and grew. And then our characters as well, we had to change moments and things like that. There's another one where like Officer Mason changed to a whole different location.
Yeah.
And in audio it was easy because we just changed the sound and it became a different place entirely, but it was a different location originally.
Yeah, I think originally the scene took place at the Summers house, but then because of some logistic issues and some pacing issues, we changed it to the apothecary shop.
It had to go downtown. Yeah. So that was a change that, we had to just sort of like grab the dialogue that made sense in that environment and then, sort of make it work in this new environment. So yeah, things changed. Things changed a lot.
We added some scenes. I think one of the ones that I can remember the most was we added a scene to season 3 between Topher and Ötzi where Ötzi is talking about suicide it's one of the only times Ötzi,
she's like overt about it?
is overtly talking about suicide. I mean, there's so much in the show. The Call of the Void obviously is this whole metaphor of intrusive thoughts, but it's this scene where Ötzi says, basically she's like, maybe I'm the problem, maybe I have to go. And Topher tries to comfort her.
Yeah, absolutely.
He so much wants to help her in that moment, and he doesn't know exactly what to do. He doesn't know exactly what to say, but he's there for her. And I think that's really what matters.
Yeah, it's very important and very beautiful. And so where'd all these ideas come from? Like, why did we add scenes? Why did we feel like we had to change a location, things like that, And I think it came from a place of like trying to tell this story and tell this ending the best way that we could. And that's why I think the best revisions happen is when you have an eye on what is the end goal, like what is this ending message and this ending, climax supposed to be, and are all of the other subsequent pieces that are leading up to this, contributing. And if they are contributing, then you're right on track. But if you feel like it isn't, or you feel like it's spinning, it's getting too slow or whatever, then it's time to make some of those changes.
I think we talk about this a lot. We talk about how at the beginning of the show, we, as creators together, we tried to get on the same page.
Calibrate.
We try to calibrate our mindset to what is our end goal here? What is the message that we're trying to say? And even for our characters, where are we taking our characters on an emotional level? And once we kind of really talked about that, then anything that we were fighting for, we're not fighting against each other. We're fighting for a certain character and a certain idea. And that allowed us to work together very smoothly, honestly. Even when we saw some things differently, we were able to go like, well, I think this should happen because remember, like, this is the end goal for Ötzi or for Topher. And then we're like, that's totally...
Absolutely. I think that is so important for collaborative duos or trios, whatever, to really, as Josie was saying, to get on the same level and to know where you're going. Because, man, ego is so easy to have as artists. I mean, gosh, like an artist having ego, what an idea. But like to be able to put that aside and say, this is the story that we're telling, this is why we're telling it, and then know why we're going in those directions is so important. And I think that's really what makes collaboration work. That way you're not compromising, you're not stabbing each other and saying, well, I won this victory, you can win that victory. That's just like the death of art when you're really just fighting each other. So trying to get on the same page and the same level is just really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go through a couple more.
Some fun ones here
from Rebecca. What would Officer Mason's favorite pizza topping be?
Oh, man.
That's a great question.
The guy's a classic. He just likes classic things. He likes simple coffees. He's not a frills boy. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I was actually going to say pineapple. I feel like that would be something that like a born and bred New Orleans guy would like.
He go for something weird, Yeah.
I think he likes pepperoni and pineapple. Honestly.
I think that's it. Yeah, pepperoni. That's pineapple. The simple. That's the classic.
Simple pepperoni, but
also
a little bit of spice.
A little bit of spice, just something a little bit strange. And I bet you people would like judge him for the pineapple, and he'd be like, "Well,
he'd just be like, that's the way I like it.
That's the way it's supposed to be." Yeah.
And then, what was each of your favorite episode to write/record? I have an answer for this. I think episode 3 of season 3 was very fun. We got to do this whole sequence where Etsy goes through a whole casino, like the Casino Planet sequence of it where she's being chased. It was really fun to even design that, because there's a part close to the beginning where she's running through the desert and she's being chased by the cultists in a truck, and we even get to hear her. She gets to a fence. We hear her climbing the fence. We hear her falling down from the fence and then continuing to run. And like after she does that, she's like more labored because that was hard to climb the fence. And then they just burst through the fence. And it's just, there's so many layers to that are just so fun. And then she bursts into this casino and it's like this big explosion of sound. And Etsy she's been living in this world in the desert where she's so isolated. And then all of a sudden she's in a casino and she's like surrounded by people and she's terrified because she doesn't want to touch anyone. She can't touch anyone or else they'll die. And then at the same time, we go back to New Orleans and we are with Topher. And he's having this great adventure with Mason. I think the phone call between Mason and Topher is one of my favorite scenes in the whole show. It's just so funny and quirky. And then we also get to step into Mason's world a little bit. And we learn a little bit about Mason and his backstory. And that it finally concludes with sort of the moment that we've been waiting for since the beginning of season 3, which is Topher and Etsy getting united again. So it's one of my favorite episodes. Do you have another one?
I do. I actually have 3, and I'll say them quick. I think the first one is in very similar vein. It's the night of Nola of Mardi Gras. Because that was such a chance for us to authentically represent what New Orleans feels like, because we knew what Bourbon Street feels like. You know, we knew like what the cobblestone steps feel like of Bourbon Street. So to bring some of that jazz and specific energy alive it was really, really fun. That was really cool. So that was definitely one of them. I think another one
that was the cathedral.
That was also the cathedral in season 2. I really love the Armageddon sprint of death in season 3, where they're just trying to get to Ohio.
In the diner. Yeah. The diner
is so good. Josie's idea to have the jukebox playing there, really good idea. So much fun. I love that episode. I think it's so suspenseful. Yeah. And I think it feels like a transition episode that's kind of easy to forget because you're just trying to get from point A to point B. But I think that the drama and like all the things that go wrong on the road, you know, starting from like a vehicle, like, you know, squealing the tires away from their house that just blew up, all the way to like wrecking a vehicle and then carrying on foot. It's so fun to me. I loved it. And the sound design going from like one to the other to like the bare minimum of what they have was like so great. Yeah. I loved it. And the last one I think is the epilogue, man. I think it's so fun and cute, and this world had so much like conflict and drama, and then to be in a world that's just so much fun is incredible. Just like so enjoyable to just have them be, you know, at peace and loving life and loving Nola.
Almost every episode of season 9 was almost every episode of season 3 was just a joy. I think episode 9 of season 3 was just we loved finally getting Topher and Etsy to that place, getting them together at the end there. It was just so beautiful. It felt very much like that was what the whole story was leading to. Yeah. Even before we knew it, it felt like that's what this whole story was. It was a love story, honestly. And I think that we didn't even know that completely setting in, but it was in the bones from the beginning, I think. And just getting them there was beautiful and awesome. I loved it.
Yeah.
And then the next question, what was the most number of layered audio tracks on top of each other in an episode? I think we mentioned something like this.
I think it was 20. If not 20, I think it was 22, but it was right around 20. And the reason again for that is because like you have environmental, you have, you know, struggling sound effects, fabric noises, all the way through like blasting noises.
Yeah, and that's sounds that are happening all at once. There's like 20 sounds happening all at once. And I think that some of those moments were the climax of season
the climb,
3,
the lighthouse climb
to the lighthouse. That was incredibly layered. And
there's music there too. There's
there's music
swelling.
too.
Yeah.
There's music. There's even multiple layers of dialogue happening, and just so much going on. There's crumbling sounds and her climbing, and there's wind and rain and seagulls, and it's just crazy. But then other moments too, where anytime there was a cryptid attack, I think there was a lot of noise. Anytime there was a car accident, those things were just a lot going on.
Yeah. We had names for like some of the sound files, so it's really kind of funny to think of some of the combinations of them. I think like Etsy's blast was a combination of like
tanks, right?
Tank and avalanche, and then crumble. That was like the three to make one blast. Was like tank, avalanche, and crumble, and it was like bits and pieces of a lot of different things to make that happen. And then cryptids were all kinds of weird. I mean, it was like
bats and insects,
and
velociraptors.
Velociraptors,
I don't
claw
know,
noises.
Yeah, I don't know who made. I mean, obviously they're not real velociraptors, so I don't know who. Who made that file? It was something on freesound.org.
Thanks, Free Sounds again.
Thanks. But yeah, it's just a lot of different things put together for even like what sounds like one sound is very often 4 sounds.
Yeah.
Another great question here is, I love this one. What are Etsy and Topher and Simone's favorite soups? Do you think they eat it from a mug or a bowl? Topher strikes me as a mug guy for soup.
Rebecca, you're right. I think he is a mug boy.
Rebecca, you are right. I think Topher is a mug boy when it comes to soup. That's just the pretentious way.
I think it is. And good question. Their favorite soups. Topher would love something like a lobster bisque, something kind of strange.
Oh, Topher would like lobster bisque.
But a good choice. Yeah. like something kind of interesting.
Yeah, seafood. Yeah. I actually, this is weird, but I love talking about food when it comes to the characters because no, it says a lot. And we've actually had this discussion where Etsy eats like kids' food. And I think it's because she is kind of like emotionally stunted from childhood.
Yes.
So I think like there is the moment where she goes to the diner with Jason in episode 3 of season 3, and she orders off the kids menu. And that's not just to be funny. Like that is actually, she kind of like emotionally thinks of herself as being a child because she had like so much trauma in childhood. And I think there's a part of her that hasn't really moved on from that. So I think that she's the kind of character that eats, grilled cheese and like, I don't know, applesauce, chicken tenders, Pop-Tarts. Like, and I think that there's another part of it too, which is perhaps even more sad. And that's that Topher, one of his love languages, I think, is making food for people. He loves caring for people, and that's one of the ways that he cares for people is like making good, wonderful, even like healthy food. And I think Etsy has such a low self-esteem that she thinks that like it's not that she likes unhealthy food. She just thinks like I don't even deserve good food. Like I just deserve to be eating Pop-Tarts because like that's the kind of person that I am. So when it comes to soup, she'd probably be eating like I don't know, like what's like SpaghettiOs or something, or like
sure.
Just like your most basic like maybe something a little kid-like and something super high in sodium, I think.
Yeah, right. Yeah, her references too, Etsy's references to like the TV shows that she knows and things like that too are also sort of weirdly dated back a little bit.
Yeah, they are.
She mentions like Martin Brody, as she names her cat Martin Brody. And there's some other references that she has that are kind of like weird 80s films references. I think it's probably because that's when she like was watching television, was when her family was all put together and her parents were showing her like, those 80s classics.
Yeah, her parents showed her the 80s classics. And sometimes she doesn't know modern references too. I think there's a couple things where people say like in season 1 where she didn't know what Etsy.com was. And I think it's just because she's
like doesn't
kind of separated from the world, like in a weird way. She's just like, I have no friends, so they don't tell me anything.
Yeah, right. Like nobody told me about that. I just didn't get a chance to know that. Yeah. But then also, okay, Simone's favorite soup.
Simone's favorite soup. This is a great question too.
I have this really strong leaning towards like an Italian wedding soup. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Something that's like, it's comforting. It's, it's like a little bit a step up from like a chicken noodle. Nothing against chicken noodles out there. Sorry.
Oh, chicken noodles are great.
Chicken noodles are really good. But I feel like an Italian wedding is like, it feels like her brand. It feels like it's consistent. It feels like it's warm. I mean, soups are warm.
Soups are warm. Although Etsy probably eats them cold.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. But that feels like a good choice for Simone. Simone is a character that it's easy to look at her and say like she's just kind of like the nerd, or she's like,
Oh, but she's so much more than that.
She is so much more than that. She's intensely loyal. She's fiercely brave, and I think that I don't know if you can get all that out of like a soup choice, but there's those qualities to her.
Intensely loyal, fiercely brave. So Italian wedding
soup. Yeah, that's the one. Italian wedding. I think that. She'd probably have it out of a bowl if you were asking at the end of the day there.
Yeah, I think
Topher's the mug boy.
He's the mug boy.
And then a gumbo, of course. I mean,
of course. Wait,
all three of them would have gumbo.
Haven't. I think Mason's not officially on the list, but I think Mason is definitely a gumbo guy too.
Oh yeah, Mason's a gumbo guy. I think Tara would just like have
Tara soup
broth, like a psychopath or something, or she'd have like I don't know. Tara would eat.
Just human.
Yeah.
Human soup.
Just human soup. So, especially Bo. Bo would 100% have some human soup.
Fargo, I think, is a vegan. So I think just mushrooms. Mushroom soup.
Yeah, good mushroom broth. Yeah.
Last question. This is the last question from Rebecca here. And I think the last one we have for you today, which is, what are you most proud of in this series?
That is a really good question, Rebecca. What are you most proud of in this series? I think it's such a simple answer, but just being able to create something like this is something that brings me a lot of gratitude. I'm just grateful that we were able to create something like this, and that it like reached out to all of you, and that you listened to it and you spent so much time with it. That means the world to us. And I think that knowing that we created something that people wanted to listen to is incredible, and that makes me feel wonderful as an artist. And to know that we created that together is just something that it means the world to me. I mean. Yeah, it's just...
Yeah, I think the response that Call of the Void has gotten has been just one of the best experiences. It's been so wonderful to like talk to people all across the country and actually all across the world that will say something like, oh my gosh, like this is my favorite story, or I'm so inspired. There's been people that have said things like, this story got me through a really hard time in my life. And I think that is something that you hold on to forever. And that's truly, that got us through making it. In the span of Call of the Void, so much happened in our own life, like 3 years. So a lot goes by in 3 years. I think a global pandemic, for one, happened during this. We got married during this.
Yep.
My dad died during the making of Call of the Void, and our listeners truly became friends. And
Absolutely.
Hearing people be inspired by something that we created, something that was a passion project, and we didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we recorded this in our living room.
Right.
So
sure.
We're not a huge company. It's just the two of us and some friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the fact that we got a message from someone, I was listening to Call of the Void on my run, and during this certain moment, I stopped and I had to catch my breath because it just made me cry. And like, being able to affect someone that's halfway across the world, I think that's what I'm most proud of.
Yeah. I think that message that, even surprised us, I think. This message of profound hope, profound love, that's something that I didn't even know that we knew it was going to feel like this at the end of it. And that's just really cool that it brought us to that place, And to be able to have these really abstract and sort of ethereal conversations in a very emotional and true way through the vehicle of the story, it's really, really satisfying and really fun. So we're grateful for that. We're grateful for this platform and for this story. And gosh, for all of you, of course.
Yeah, I think that I'm speaking for both of us. I think it's been like the biggest part of our life for 3 years, like the biggest project, the thing that we kind of wake up and go every day for 3 years. We'd like wake up and go like, okay, what do we do for Call of the Void today? Like, what are we editing today? What are we writing today? It's just a huge part of our lives. It continues to be. We love these characters. We talk about them all the time still. And yeah, they're huge. They're a huge part of our lives.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for more Call of the Void, something that we created towards the end of the show are these donor packets. For anyone that is able to make a donation, the donations are amazing. They help us pay our actors and like literally help us create audio drama. So we're so grateful for any amount of donation. But we have a couple different perks and stuff on our donation scale. And one of them is these donor packets that you can either get an electronic version or you can get an actual physical version mailed to you. And those are really, really fun. We're not super descriptive about what's in them because we kind of want it to be a bit of a surprise. But I think the descriptions that we have on the website are, there's a JM Labs packet, and then there's a Fargo Kaminsky packet. And they include some really cool documents and some really cool items. They're really cool. They kind of like give you more insight into the worlds of both JM Labs and Fargo. It's just like, if you're a fan of Fargo, there's some really fun, quirky things in the Fargo packet. So yeah, if you go onto our website and go to the donation information. And then another thing too is merchandise. We have merchandise available on our website. We have some really cool like t-shirts and stuff like that. It's always fun. I'm wearing right now my Martin Brody t-shirt that I love.
And we love making audio. Which brings us to our very, very last closing, I think, thought Closing statements here. But we're not done making audio fiction. We love this sort of long storytelling that we can do in this medium. And so we are very excited that we are going to be doing another one very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, very, very shortly, as in...
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Yeah. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to announce that on our website and our social media as soon as we possibly can. Yeah. And all we can say now is that it will be fictional podcast. It will be television for your ears style, just like Call of the Void. And
we'll say it's not going to be a continuation of Call of the Void.
No.
Topher and Etsy's arcs, it was clear to us that that was the end of that story. And so it will not be Topher and Etsy as the leads or anything. But it will be another great story. And yeah.
And with that, thanks for listening. As always, y'all are the best. We so appreciate you, and we can't wait to get more content your way.
It has been wonderful jumping back into the Call of the Void with you. Thank you so much for your questions. And for now, stay tuned, stay sane.